objects that we are going to create are custom objects basically. Okay, so we need to create the custom objects. That's fine. Go to setup, as I told you. Go to create. Under the build, we need to go to create, and then we need to go to the objects. Setup, create objects, then click on new custom object. Give it a label and a plural label. Label is just, you know, the name that you want to display to the end users. So you can put a name here which is like projects. First thing is projects, right? Okay, so give a label, plural label, and then object name. Okay, any table that we are creating, think of it, whenever we are creating an object, it should at least have one column. You cannot have a table without with 0 column. It should have a minimum of 1 column, right, or at least 1 field. That is what we call it. So while you're creating the object, at this point of time, what are we creating? We are creating the object, project object. Okay, but at that time only it asks us, it by default, whenever you create an object, it creates the first field for it, right? So by default it asks you for the name of it. The field will be created. Okay, the field will be created automatically. It is just asking you for the label of it. Name of this field, the first field which is going to be created, it is by default name, N-A-M-E. This is the name of the field, and label of the field it would ask. So you can say project name or only project, whatever you want. You put a label to it, and it's a text field. If you want to do reporting on that, on the data from that object, you say allow reports. Fine. If you feel that at a later point of time you would need to generate reports using the data of that object, you say allow reports, otherwise you cannot select this. If you want to allow activities on that object, you say allow activities, otherwise not required. If you want to track field history is, you know, the previous history of some field of that object, right? In case you want to store that, you should in case you want to track the field history, select that, otherwise don't select it. Okay, deployment status, keep it deployed. If you do not want the users to be able to use that object at this point of time, then make it in development. Okay, anything which has a status in development is not available for use. Something which has a status deployed is available for use. So just click on save. Your object is created, right? You see, custom object project has been created. Scroll down. Now the object that we created is custom object. Hello.
Jeet, one quick question here. Yeah, I see API name project underscore C. What is that?
Yeah, API name is something which will be used during our programming part, once we come into the programming thing and all, right?
Okay.
All right. So now the interesting thing is, the moment you created this object, so this is what, this is a custom object. Okay, now on a custom object, whenever you create an object, there are 4 fields which are created by default. You don't have to create. 4 fields are created by default. One of those we saw, name field. In addition to the name field, there are other 3 fields. One is created by, one is last modified by, and one is owner. So who created the field? Who is the owner of, who created the record? Who modified the record? Who was the last modifier of the record, and who is the owner of the record? So these 3 fields are there by default. Okay. So that is the reason why these 4 fields are called standard fields. See? Because there is something that Salesforce created. You cannot delete these fields. These fields will be there. So any object that you create by default comes with 4 fields. So 4 fields are already there. In addition to that, whatever fields you need, you will have to create them under the custom fields. Got that? So what all fields we need to create? ID, name, start date, end date. The name field already created, right? Start date, end date, estimated time. So these are the things that we need to create. Okay. So the ones that we need to create are the custom fields. So you can straight away go and click on the new custom field, new option. Let's say you want to create a field for start date. So your data type in the start date field will be what? Select the data type from here. What should be the data type? Anyone can tell me? For start date, what should be the data type?
Date.
Date. Right. So depending on what type of data you want to store in that field, if it is start date, end date, if it is currency, if it is email ID, if it is text, or you want to store number, URL, pick list, drop down basically. So whatever you want in that field, select the data type from here. Here we need a date. Click on next. Now it's pretty simple. Start date. If you want the field to be a required field, means a mandatory field. Required field, if you would have noticed, while you try to create an account, this account name is a required field. If you do not put a value for that, the record will not be saved. If you want this to be a required field, you should select it here. Otherwise, you can straight away go to the next. For this step 3, while you are creating a field, just select on visible and go to next. For the time being, you don't need to understand what this is. We will talk about it later. And skip this part also. Just click on save. Don't do anything here on step 4. Click on save. We are fine. We will talk about this a little later. So your field got created. Fine. Start date field got created. Another field I need, end date. End date will also be a date field. Select date, go to next. Yeah. So for this object, how many fields do we have at this point of time? We have 6. 4 standard fields and 2 custom fields. Right? Start date and end.